and some club news and some AFL news, and also we'll be talking about young Glenelg star Lewis Rayson. So let's not crap on any further. Let's get into it. Good evening, and welcome to Tuesday Night Live for another week, the 6th of July, 2021. Time slipping away, and joining me as usual on a Tuesday night, Peter. How you going, Pete?
Really well, Fane. Yourself?
Pretty good, mate, for a Tuesday, and I actually spent most of the day thinking it was Wednesday, which was a bit disappointing, but never mind. G'day to everyone who's joined us on Discord tonight. There's a few people already in the live audience chat. Look forward to some interaction tonight, would be great. Also, thanks to everyone who's joined us on YouTube. We've got a few there already. St. Ratty, good evening, mate. A fair bit to get through in our 45 minutes tonight, Peter. The graphics are sadly lacking, but I don't think anyone will be too disappointed about that. Now, I know that you've been away, mate, but did you happen to catch the game?
I did catch a little bit of it, just while enjoying some hospitality from one of the great country football clubs. So, yeah, it was, it was a game of... really 2.5 and 1.5 quarters, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was pretty much.
Some really, really strong competitive efforts from our team, I thought, but unfortunately just really got overrun in that last quarter. And even, pushing through the third quarter there, we looked, without ever looking like we would, it was one of those strange games, wasn't it? It was without ever looking like we're ever going to win the game. I didn't see a real blowout coming. I thought we were just going to keep it, but keep it within reasonable. I'm quite sure I liked the reaction though of sort of saying, well, it wasn't really a 56 or 52 point, or it didn't feel like, well, this is coming from the coach.
Yeah.
Well, it was. It was. You know what I mean? Like that's what the score was. So. I thought it was great that we were competitive for the time that we were, but I think we're going back to that situation whereby, where we had against Carlton, the week we seem to have those lapses where teams seem to be able to really rattle on and score 6, 7 or 8 goals.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand the sentiment from Nick's, because watching the game from start to finish, it never felt like a 9-goal loss. And I think it was indicative of the fact that we did hang in. I think my observation was basically that our structures worked really well and our matchups worked really well and our intensity was really good for as long as we could sustain it. And in the end, it was just Brisbane's class, experience, etc., that got us. And it's probably, to be honest with you, 9 goals is probably, in today's footy, where scoring can be pretty free at times, it's probably a fair indication of the gap between the two teams, 9 goals.
Yeah, yep, no, that's fair enough.
So, I mean,
really happy.
Go on.
No, you go.
No, I was just going to say, so, watching it personally, I wasn't terribly disappointed, and to some degree, the scoreline was a little bit irrelevant, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And I think that we certainly go back to what working out what are we trying to get out of this year, and where is the team at? And once again, for a significant part of the game against, let's be honest, a potential grand finalist this year. We're competitive for long periods of the game.
Yep.
And particularly as we've rolled out yet another debutant as well. So I mean, I was thrilled that Luke Pedler had a game. How did you see his game?
Well, he didn't look out of place, Pete. I mean, he's obviously short of run. He got limited midfield time, but his first couple of rotations in the midfield, he did a couple of things that just made you sit up and go, okay. He showed a little bit more pace than I expected. Certainly burst out of contests, which is really good to see. didn't look quite the hustle and bustle type that I thought he was. He looked a little bit more dynamic than that, Peter, to be honest.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that. I mean, we did talk about last week as to whether he would be in line for a game, because we were just a little bit worried about his fitness.
Yeah.
But I was absolutely thrilled to bits to see that they were prepared to pull the trigger on him.
Yeah,
and
that was good.
And I think he's he certainly, all the vision that I saw of him playing last year, he's a classy player.
Yeah.
And, I'm hoping that I think that because particularly he has that look of being a real sort of street fighter, doesn't he? he's got a bit of that Fight Club look about him.
Well,
and, but I think
but he's got a little bit more class than I think a lot of us have given him credit for, Peter. He is that junkyard dog type. He's got that look about him, and he plays aggressively. But when he gets the ball on the outside and when he gets clear, he's not all hustle and bustle. He's not a Ben Keys type that lacks a bit of skill. He's got polish as well.
Yeah. Well, did he do enough to hold his spot, would you think?
I would have thought 13 touches in around about under 60% time on ground, I think it was. More than enough for a debut, in my opinion, to hold his spot. And I'd like to see more of him. I want to see more of him. I think having made it into the team, I think he deserves a bit of a stint. A couple of brickbats. Billy Frampton, I never want to see in the team again. I mean, I was very happy to see Shane McAdam pay his dues. I think that was deserved. I was disappointed that they dropped Fogarty, regardless of his low output the previous week. I just felt like that forward structure actually, to me, looked the most potent of all our configurations we've had so far this season. I felt like our forward line took a step backwards with Billy in the team.
Yeah, I sense that Billy will inevitably be labelled as just one of those players caught in between the two leagues, and a little bit too good for Sandford, but just does not seem to have a game to suit AFL.
Yeah,
and
he's a tease, Pete, because he does do very well. He shows a lot more at Sandford level than Elliott has, and he always looks like it. But then you get to AFL level, and I was so disappointed to see him not do the things that he's in the team for, which was contest in marking situations. So many times he got pushed out of the contest. He was out of position. He was three deep. He was hustled and bustled out of it by the Brisbane defence, and it was a bit of a shame. Speaking of defence, of course, the other one that I've finally had enough of, Peter, is young Jake Kelly, and I had a fair bit to say on Sunday night, so I won't labour the point. But Jake is a staunch defender. He's a good lockdown, dour defender type. But in today's rebound, running, dynamic football, where you need to move the ball quickly and aggressively and assertively, Jake is just all at sea with ball in hand. And there was a few times on the weekend that he was the man that had to pull the trigger. And he just couldn't do it. It's not in his makeup.
That's right. He's a lockdown player, and he's had that limitation for a good many years.
Yeah, and
it doesn't surprise me that that he's in that situation. So, no, I think that Jake is. I think that they'll probably continue to persevere with him just while we're a young side, but. There has to be. We need to be, better than that, and we need some better options running out of defence.
Yeah. Well, we need young Worrell to come on. He's the natural choice, I think. I thought I liked the Murray inclusion, and I thought Murray played well. And the thing that surprises me, particularly with Tex going down on the weekend, is that they didn't swing Murray forward a bit. I know it would have been robbing Peter to pay Paul, but they actually swung Tom Diday forward, and Tom, as we know, is good aerially when he can be floating into a contest, but I don't think he's terribly fantastic one-on-one. And I would have liked to have seen Murray down there because I feel like he attacks the ball really well aerially. And we've seen him kick a goal or two up forward. So I was a bit surprised about that. But I like Murray in the side against teams that have the sort of forward setup that Brisbane have.
I think just quickly hopping back on to Billy. The other thing I guess was disappointing is the fact that Tex goes down, and so there's a real opportunity there, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And we needed him to set up. The fact that we had to swing today down forward, Pete, was testament to Billy's lack of impact on the game. So never mind. I was actually hoping that Nix might go small in that last quarter and try and beat him for pace, but whether we didn't have the cattle or whatnot, I'm not sure. But they did what they did. Chase Jonesy, I thought took a little step. He's looking more assured down back, and with Luke Brown really starting to struggle with that Achilles, and we'll talk about injuries in a second. Chase seems to be the heir apparent to that small defender role, and he didn't do bad when he was up against Cameron and the other guy that they have, that other small forward. Forget his name.
Yeah, look, on McCarthy, was it?
Lincoln McCarthy.
He's a very good footballer, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
Just on Chase, I'm kind of, I'm super, super happy that he's gradually going through the process of proving me wrong, and so I'm very, very happy about that. And I think he's been quite serviceable in the last few weeks. I'm still sort of a hope that we can. That really what we're trying to do is just get him confident and get him playing good football. My honest hand on heart hope, Feen, is that he can transition. He can still transition out of that position into the midfield. I still have that hope, and it may well be that he just becomes a permanent, lockdown small defender for us. And if that's the case, then so be it. We haven't, the pick hasn't been wasted, and it's important we have every role covered. Particularly, as you say, is it.
Yeah, sorry. We might be on a little bit of a delay here, Pete, so if I talk over you, my apologies.
No, that's okay.
Just watching Chase again on the weekend, I don't think he has the peripheral vision to be a midfielder. Yep. He seems to be quite tunnel visioned, and he's great in straight lines. He's got good burst speed. He attacks the ball well, attacks the contest well. I think the reason why he struggled so much at AFL level in the midfield is because he lacks that awareness, that spatial awareness, and I think a lockdown small defender might be the best we can hope for him. And whilst it's not a great return on pick 9, it's better than a Gallucci outcome where he just drops off the list. So, the lesser of two evils.
Absolutely agree with that. Absolutely agree that much better to have him. It's still an important role.
Yeah.
And we can still get him, we can get that confident up and get him really, really running and really streaming through halfback as well, and really providing some rebound for us.
Yeah.
It could end up being a really, really important role for us. So, no, I'm really, really pleased that he's making those strides. Yeah. It's really good.
He strikes me as a DMAC type. Remember, Pete, the first interview we ever did with David McKay way back in 2015. Yep. And McKay was saying how Dean Bailey had really sharpened his focus, and that McKay had recognised that he was very a task-oriented footballer. I have a feeling that Chase might be similar. I think Chase needs a role with very clear, direct and simple instructions.
Yep. I think that's a pretty good assessment, actually. And you're right. He doesn't strike you as the kind of footballer that has that sort of ingenuity to create I think you can't just give him a blank page and ask him to paint you a nice picture.
Yeah. Now I guess you would have seen the footage of Tex's injury. At the time, my thoughts went to Neil Sash, and unfortunately, Pete, you're probably old enough to remember Neil Sash and that incident as well. And it looked so similar with Tex's head snapping back the way it did. But
sickening. Absolutely sickening,
wasn't it? Just and the fact that he couldn't get up for a little while, etc. So hearts in mouths. But he reckons he's going to get up for this Friday night. I reckon the club might say have a rest, Tex.
Absolutely.
We'll just spend another year on him, so we don't want to break him now. So I wouldn't mind betting they actually bring Darcy back in for Tex this week to give him a run. Luke Brown is listed as a test. Yeah, on his Achilles, Luke Brown. Seems to be very hot and cold, that injury. There's times where he looks like he's running at a pedestrian rate, and other times where like when he chased down Cameron to save a goal, he looked like he was on the pace. So it's one of those injuries, I think, that's just a week-to-week proposition. The rest of them, I mean, we've got Matty Crouch out for another 4 at least, and I don't know whether I want to see Matt Crouch back in the Adelaide Crows team. Pete, what do you think?
I've got a funny feeling that both him and Daniel Talia seem to be heading towards a whole year out, and then a whole lot of hoo-ha with their contracts as well. So I think watch this space with those two. They seem to be headed in the same direction.
Yeah, well, Matt Crouch is free agent, of course, at the end of this year. I wouldn't mind betting the market gets tested with Matt, unfortunately. I'm not so sure about Daniel Talia. I don't think we're heavily stocked with tools. Nick Murray has been Murray's been serviceable. Geordie Butts is a standout in terms of probably the best young defender in the comp, I reckon.
Yeah, he absolutely is. He doesn't get enough recognition.
That's a potent forward line. Potent forward line, the Brisbane forward line.
Yeah. It's that old chestnut, though, that we always hear, if he played in Victoria, he'd get more recognition. Well, why is that? Just gives me the shits, to be honest.
Yeah.
He should be recognised for what he's doing week in, week out this year.
Yeah, that's why we're here, Pete, because it's an indictment on the bloody AFL media that they can't look outside the lockdown borders of Victoria. So,
is he eligible for Rising Star nomination?
Do you know what? I think he's ineligible by about a week or a month or something in terms of his age.
Yeah.
But he certainly would be right up there. Now, the one that's a bit of a forgotten man, but I didn't mind his performances before he went down, that could be very well a Jake Kelly replacement, is Mitch Hinge, who's out with that shoulder for the season still. Pete, we kind of forget about him, but he looked all right off halfback.
I thought he had a couple of he had a couple of nice touches and had done some good things off halfback. I know they spoke very, very highly of him at Brisbane. He was an emergency in their prelim final side. Yep. So he was around the mark. He wasn't too far off with Brisbane in such a strong side.
A bit
of a worry with the shoulder, and how that's going to stand up. But hopefully with some the treatment that he's had, and he can bounce back for us. But absolutely agreed. He had some really quite nice moments in that first couple of rounds before he went down.
And looks
in fact, it was round one that he went down, wasn't it?
1 or 2. Can't remember because he played in the trials as well, so that might have but it just looked a little bit dynamic with ball in hand as well. So and of course we've got Miller with his knee, who's progressing nicely by all accounts. The bloke that has got off the injury list is Tommy Lynch, kicked 3 in the 2s. Peter on the weekend, and Nicky and I on the weekend wrap decided that despite Braden Cook continuing his good run of form, and Lockie Gallant also showing good form in the 2s, we're pretty comfortable it'll be Tommy Lynch that'll come back into the side.
I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever that will happen. But absolutely thrilled to bits to see Braden Cook doing as well as he did.
Yes,
and he had some very, very nice moves out there, and he's just percolating along. Him and Gallant just percolating along very, very nicely.
Yep. Agreed. He looks a footballer, Peter. So with Shane McAdam, what I would term technically stinking it up, he could well slot into that spot. Anyway, other club news. There's been a little bit of rumbling about the Brompton site, but nothing so far, aside from the fact that the original date was for a decision was supposed to be around about now, but I think it's pushed back to the next board meeting, which is in September, I think Olsen said. I think Rev SA are doing a public tender, but the word around the traps is that that's for show. I would be quite surprised if the Crows don't end up at the Brompton site over Thebby. Have you got any word on that at all?
No word on it. My personal preference is for them to end up at the Brompton site. I think that would be a much better. I just think the whole, a little bit messy with the Adelaide Footy League as well. Have got into Theberton and made that their home. I'm not sure whether we really want to tread on their toes. I'm not sure that Theberton's the answer for the Crows. I don't think it's a great position, to be honest.
Well, I think the thing that sullies the waters with Thebby is the fact that they're going to have to use Kings for about 6 years as a depot for the roadworks, which means that that won't be available for the first 6 years of a lease. That's a long time.
Yeah.
And
the Brompton site being right on the tram there to go straight up to the ground. I mean, I think that's just perfect, isn't it?
Yep. Well, you got the train on the other side.
In terms of the crowd. Yep. Yeah. No. In terms of the crowd, as you say, you got the train on one side, you got the tram on the other. In terms of actually it being a hub for supporters, and I know there's a lot more to it than that, but I think that really seals the deal in terms of how its locality to the city and how easy it is.
Yeah, I think so, and I think Johnny Olsen will use his connections to get that over the line. So that looks like happening around about finals time. So we'll just keep watching brief on that one.
That would be excellent.
Now, we've talked about anyone else you think might be a chance to come in this week for Friday night's game, Pete?
I don't think so, Feen. Tex, I think it'd be 50-50. So I really think that Tom Lynch will be the one that's waiting in the wings.
Yeah.
And look, they might bring Billy straight back out.
Yeah.
But they've got, there's Fogarty still there who could go back in, and obviously Tommy Lynch as well. So I think they're the most likely ins for me. Would love to see Cook or Gallant get a run, but just don't think it will happen.
Yeah. Just to finish off this little conversation about players on the cusp, what's your read on Himmelberg, Pete? Is he now out of the equation, do you think?
Well, excuse me. Sadly, it seems so, doesn't it? I mean, the world was his oyster last year, and he was just on fire, and he looked like he'd really taken steps. He signs a 2-year deal. Everything seemed to be on the up, and I don't know what happened across the pre-season with him, but he just didn't seem to be able to really grab that spot that he'd had towards the end of last season. And so now we see him languishing in the reserves, and he seems to be, well behind others to get a game. So I just have I have a strong feeling that there's two options with him. His brother's playing at GWS.
Yeah.
He's originally from Queensland. I think plenty of options there that whether it be Gold Coast, GWS. I think there's a potential for Elliott to find a home at one of those two clubs.
Yeah. Well, I just wonder
if Elliott himself will. Yeah, I just wonder if he himself will just get to a point where he says, "Look, I'm out of here because I'm just, I'm behind Phil Thorpe." I just what I'd actually like to see is them to give O'Brien a rest, and just put Elliott in there and say, "Look, you're the ruck this week." I think he's actually quite a good ruckman.
Yeah,
so
he is.
I
agree.
I'd like to see him try a couple of things with Elliott just to see if there's some sort of way, shape, or form. I don't think O'Brien's been particularly impressive this year,
no,
at all. And I think that whether he's got a lingering back injury or whether he should be, I'm just not quite sure there's much value in playing him for 22 games. So I'd really like to see him give Elliott a run in the ruck, just to give him something.
Yeah.
But no, I think that sadly he looks to be heading towards the exit door.
Look, I think so. And he finished the year last year with so much promise, and it was starting to clunk some marks, looking a little bit more, had a bit more intensity about him. But like you said, I don't know what happened on the off season, but he's just gone off the boil again. He's too there's too much raw material there, I think, for him to drop out of the AFL system. I can see him going to a Gold Coast as a forward ruck option for them.
Yep.
But sadly, I don't see any future. If he can't get a run ahead of Fogarty, ahead of Frampton, I should say, and there's a few people on the chat saying otherwise, but in my opinion, Frampton's shown a hell of a lot more at SANFL level than Elliott has, and of the two on form deserved selection. But if he can't get ahead of Billy Frampton, then I don't think there's room. Well, I just don't think there's room on the list for two big men who are taking up list spots. So anyway, all right. Now, just moving on quickly to AFL news, Peter, and there was collective cries of anguish and sadness this week when the news broke that Steve Hocking would be vacating the General Manager Footy Operations position going back to Geelong. Did you feel the same level of pain as the rest of us?
Oh, look, I did see some wag on social media talking about Christmas in July.
That may or may not have been me.
No, I have absolutely no affinity for that man at all. I think he is a Geelong man through and through. Some of the crap that he's brought to the game is just, I don't think that he leaves the game in any better position. And one of the things that I did read through the week, Feen, that I think is just terrifying is that apparently, he tried to bring in the 18-metre goal square. And it was Gillen who shut that down and just said, no, you've gone too far. The 18-metre goal square. Now, if there's been in history that's tried to screw our game more than any other, it's that idiot. And I'm just absolutely glad. The only thing that concerns me is that he'll go down and do a stint at Geelong and end up coming back as
come back as the CEO
to the AFL. That worries me a lot. But
Brendan Gale's the great white hope when it comes to Gillen's job, I reckon. I'd rather see. I think Brendan's far more measured than Steve Hocking's shown to be. So let's hope that Brendan sticks around and puts his hand up when Gillen moves on. But
I have the utmost regard and respect for Brendan Gale. I think he's a terrific and a real solid citizen of AFL, and I think he would be fantastic. But oh my God, he's just Anyway, that was good.
Yeah,
that was good.
So I enjoyed that, and if it gives us a bit of a reprieve for a couple of years and allows the game to settle back down again. And look, I was watching the SANFL on the weekend. I think it was South v Eagles. High quality game against between two quality teams, and there was none of that stand on the mark and carry on, and the game flowed really, really nicely. Both teams were able to move the ball in difficult conditions up at Noarlunga. The game did not need a statue on the mark rule, and I hope that someone with some brains at AFL level can maybe convince Gillen to scrap that rule after this year, because I hate it.
Did it need the insufficient intent rule, or was just last touch out of bounds okay?
Well, again, last touch out of bounds seems to be a pretty simple way of dealing with things, doesn't it?
You would think so.
We've had that in the SANFL now for how many years? About 5 or 6 years, if not longer.
All the way through the junior grades, and it just works perfectly.
Yep,
everyone knows what's going on.
No controversy whatsoever. No controversy.
No.
So,
no arguments. No controversy.
Yeah. Now, more interestingly, Hawthorn were forced today by Collingwood's approach to Sam Mitchell to announce their succession planning. Ironic
interesting.
Yes, ironic that Collingwood were the team that forced Hawthorn to announce something that Collingwood did unsuccessfully a few years ago, and Clarkson saying that he will not coach Hawthorn beyond 2023. So that's still 2 years away, Peter. But there's a few coaches coming out of contract in 22.
It was really interesting, wasn't it, that Sam Mitchell sort of forced their hand, and a few days ago he pulls out of the race, and then all of a sudden Hawthorn have got a role for him. So, yeah, it was. I guess you'd have to say well played to Sam Mitchell for putting that pressure on them.
Yes.
And you have to think that he must have been in quite high in the running for Collingwood spot. For Hawthorn to quickly realise that then they need to do something. So, but not a bad deal for Sam Mitchell. He can sit back, another year of development for Clarko to put into the Hawthorn team, and I think with another year, by the time he takes over in 23, they should be a reasonable side.
And no word from Clarkson at this stage as to whether he'll continue or whether this is a retirement thing. He's far too young to retire, and I can see a few clubs doing the sums right now, and to be honest with you, Peter, the Adelaide Crows should be one of them.
Yeah, I'm not convinced. I'm not quite sure how that would go in terms of, and I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on this. When Matty Nicks has done such a tremendous job of building the culture, and I'll focus on that.
Yeah.
Because what we talk about it week in, week out. What we see with that club at the moment is what we haven't seen for a long time, which is real fight, real spirit.
Yep.
And I know, look, playing groups get it. They get over changes of coaches and things, but I just feel that Matthew Nicks has a real fingerprint on this side at the moment, and I wonder whether to change him, at the end of next year would be upsetting the apple cart. I don't know.
I don't disagree with your comments about culture. I think Matty has the players, that the old cliche, the players are playing for him. Yet to be convinced that Matthew has the tactical nous to be a premiership coach, but I think we've got a very good team in general in the coach's box that probably is probably more the sum of the parts than any one particular individual. But I think if we stagnate a little bit next year, I think personally the club will probably be looking, rightly or wrongly, to push for a top 8 berth next year. I think that's probably a year premature, but not a bad thing, I think, for the club to think that, all right, we've got 2 years into some of these lads and a year into some others, time to push forward. So it'll be interesting. I mean, a bloke like Clarkson doesn't come onto the market very often, and I think there'll be temptation from a lot of clubs in a similar position to ours, like a club like St Kilda, for example, that will have had Ratton for a few years. There's one or two others that have, West Coast Eagles will be circling, I reckon. Andy Simpson's been there for 8 years now.
Fremantle will be one.
Yeah, although Luke, what's his name? He's only been there for a couple. The other one is Gold Coast. Clarkson, being the saviour at the Gold Coast, would probably be the front runner, you would think.
Wouldn't they love that narrative?
Well, it's a narrative, and the AFL love a narrative. They love a story, don't they? Paul Roos has been involved in a couple of those stories. So I reckon if Clarkson went up to Gold Coast and he couldn't get him into playing regular finals, that'd be the best indicator of all of the AFL that it's just a lost cause up there.
Yep, absolutely.
What else have we got going on in the AFL? I can't think of any other news in the AFL. The only other news, I guess, is that with the restrictions being lifted, Port have got a full house on Thursday night. So irrespective of the fact that it's Port and not us, it's great to see a full house back in Adelaide, and hopefully the other states can get their shit together soon, and we can have full houses at the footy all over the country again.
Absolutely.
Right, now, Peter, anything else for us to talk about in that space? Why don't we talk about another young South Australian prospect? We've gone through half of the South bloody team, so let's saunter on down Brighton Road and go to the Bay and talk about
go to the Bay.
Lewis Rayson.
We are going to talk about Lewis Rayson, and I know that he's one that's had your interest throughout the season, Feen, and Lewis is just quietly going about his business and being an absolute star performer for the Glenelg under-18s, and I don't think he's going to get promotion up to the reserves or league. Very, very difficult down at the Bay at the moment, Feen, because I think all three of those teams are atop or near the top of the ladder.
Yep.
So it's pretty tight for spots there. So he's just going to ply his trade in the under 18s. But Lewis Rayson is about a 181 centimetre running halfback, which is where he kind of made his name. He's got tremendous speed, tremendous running power off that halfback line, and he has an absolutely raking kick in the Brodie Smith sort of mould. And so that's kind of what you're getting with Lewis Rayson, but he uses the ball immaculately. Very, very good player. The thing I think with Lewis Rayson is that if there was a knock on him towards the end of last year, it just was his competitiveness. His competitiveness a bit. His one-on-one and that kind of stuff. And he's come back this year and really, really worked on that, and has become a much more of a contested player. And that has led to him actually moving up towards the midfield a bit more. So he's actually been playing quite a bit of midfield minutes for Glenelg, and still racking up an absolute ton of the football. So he, he's your 30 touches a game player. He hits the scoreboard. Where he sits in terms of the draft is a funny one, because I almost feel that he's almost a little bit bigger version of Paddy Parnell, who we took in the mid-season draft. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I'm just sort of wondering where, in terms of the Crows, I'm wondering whether he may, whether he'll meet a need for us. Although, of course, picking the draft should be on talent, not need. So it depends on who's available at our pick. But I think Lewis, depending on how he goes, again, depending on how the champs pan out, but I think that Lewis will sit somewhere between 25 and 40.
Yeah,
I reckon that's about his draft range. I've seen a few mock drafts around with him higher. I've seen him as high as sort of 20, 21, 22, up around that mark. So I guess as a player comparison, you'd probably say he's a little bit shorter Brodie Smith. So that's the kind of player that you're looking at. He's got real pace and endurance off half back. So he'll run the lines all day for you, and he'll rack up a ton of these. He's a very, very good overhead mark. He'll get a lot of the ball. He'll put a lot of ball inside 50. But he has just added that contested side to his game. So I think probably somebody got in his ear and said, look, if you don't add that contested side to your game, you can forget about an AFL career.
Yeah.
But he has added that Feen. And as a consequence, as I say, he's had a significant amount of more of midfield minutes than he had previously. So he's as most players sort of around 178 to 182 have to be now. He's fairly, he can rotate through a few different positions for you. So he's a very, very high quality player. He's a very, very classy player. He'll go. Someone will pick him up in the draft, and whether it's us, whether we, I guess it will just depend on Hamish's talent list and where he sits. But I reckon he will be, as I said, that 25 to 40. Now, I've got a question on there just at the moment about, is there a young ruckman we should look out for? Feen, there is a young lad who, surprise, is playing for under 18s for South by the name of Will Verrill.
Yes, I know about Wirral.
Yep, he's a bottom ager, so he won't be available for 2022, but we want to have a pretty decent pick available to if we're looking to add a ruckman to pick up Will Verrill. But he's the one that I would say stands out at the moment. I'd really like to get a look at him in the under 18s carnival. But he won't be available next year. And but he is one of the really, really high quality ruckmen running around the SANFL at the moment.
Yeah, Sloan Ranger 3 also talks about Tom Lewis from Sturt. I've seen a little bit of Tom and don't mind him at all. He's a hustle bustle kind of bloke and just loves dropping blokes. So I don't know where he sits in the scheme of things, but he's one of those players you just like to watch because he just just gets in amongst it. You know, Lewis Rayson,
people.
Yeah, Lewis Rayson. Like we said at the beginning of the season, I think, or the beginning of the discussion this year on Tuesday Night Live, that he was going to need to be able to step up into the midfield, and you're right, he has been able to do that. I don't know whether he'd necessarily be on the Crows' radar, Pete. Because we've got a dearth of running halfback flankers, and how many do we need? But I don't know whether he fits where our picks sit this year either. I think our pick profile doesn't. He'd probably go between our second and third pick, I would have thought.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think you're also right in the sense that I think we're in a stage where I think that we're going to really, really hit the midfield in this draft.
Yeah.
And I think that you'd be picking Lewis Rayson as a halfback with a potential to continue developing him in the midfield. And so I think that I think that, as I say, picking up Paddy Parnell, who I'm super impressed with, by the way. I think that even though he's a bit shorter and a bit slighter, he is that kind of player. And so I just think that, having picked him up in the mid-season draft, I think that even if Lewis is available, I have a funny feeling we'll overlook him.
Yeah.
But he will find a home.
Yeah. I see him. I could see Lewis actually forging a career on a wing. I feel like his value getting the ball with those long raking kicks into a forward 50 would be quite valuable. And the fact that he's become a little bit more competitive this year in contested situations means that I feel like he'll as you say, he'll get picked up somewhere, and I wouldn't mind betting he'll end up having a career sort of wing half back, maybe a little bit of half forward as well, rather than being a coal-faced midfielder, if you know what I mean.
Well, absolutely, Feen. I mean, your top 10 to top 20, are those really, really genuine sort of blue ribbon mids that, everyone's looking for. And then once you get over sort of pick 20, you are sort of looking at, more kids that will come in and play a role for you. And that might be, running through the midfield, running through the wings, running through, that 180 centimetre kind of guy that needs to be versatile and can run through a number of different positions. And so I think that's where he ends up. And I think that's why he drops, down to, let's say, between 25 and 40. I think that's where he sits. So, but a lot to like about Lewis. He's very, very professional. I'm pretty sure he was captain of Sacred Heart's first 18 last year. And great leadership, and he'll be a really good pickup for somebody, there's no doubt.
Yeah. 1990 Crows saying in the chat, and just before we finish this up, we've probably got a minute or two, so if anyone wants to have a quick word, put your hand up now. And Pete, if you have to dart off, I'm quite happy to field the calls. Rayson lacks a weapon. I don't know about that 1990. I think he's actually added to his base football ability this year, as we said, with his ability to get a bit more of his own ball and also his disposal. So I think they're his weapons. The ability that he can be a bit inside, outside, and also that he's just got a great disposal by foot.
Yeah, I think if you, if you look at a kid like Paddy Parnell, if a kid like that can get on the list because his weapon is his kicking, his decision making, then he can. And it's kicking and decision making is a legitimate AFL weapon that they value, and they value highly. And I think that that's what we'll see him get himself onto a list. How he goes from there, anybody's guess, obviously. But he absolutely will get himself on a list, and it will be that kick that gets him on.
It's a great point you make, Pete, because every game that we've lost this season, it's been where our transition has fallen down, and a lot of that is to do with that next kick and the hit up 45 degree. We end up going up and down the line. I think my camera might have frozen, so apologies to people that are watching on YouTube, but we're just about done anyway. So, I think it is something that coaches really value. The ability to make quick decisions, something that we lament Jake Kelly can't do, and to be able to hit up targets in tight spaces, to get through zones and to get through congestion. So you're dead set right. Look, mate, no one's putting their... Oh, go on.
I'll just very, very quickly add an anecdote from a SNFL under-18 coach who was heard lamenting that the biggest struggle that he faces as an under-18 coach is trying to find kids that he would bet his house on hitting a 20-metre target under pressure.
Yeah.
It's a big issue.
Well, and I've got to say, Pete, as you know, I was involved in junior coaching for years, and it is the manner in which the resources have been spread thin at junior level with the SANFL clubs. Certainly, I can speak for South Australia only, of course, but the fact that the SANFL clubs continue to be the gatekeepers for junior development gives us this outcome, Peter, because they don't have the resources. They often don't have highly skilled footballers coaching. They're more people managers that are coaching. And no disrespect to anyone who's involved at that level, because more power to them. And their time is so valuable. But what it means is that we're left with kids at the 13, 14, 15 years of age level who don't have basic skills. And I think that is really evident when you get to the under-16s squads, and half of them can't bloody kick.
Yep. And look, if they haven't kicked a kick out in the oval before training, they'll hit their target every time. The problem they've got is you put them under pressure. You put them under a game situation where they're under pressure for that skill to stand up and hit a 20-metre target. Try and pick your way, as you quite rightly say, to pick your way through a zone. It just doesn't stand up. Not for enough kids anyway.
I know you got to go, but just a quick anecdote. So Cam, obviously, my eldest, went through the Westies thing and loves his footy. My youngest, Tyler, has never, ever shown any interest in football after getting kicked in the face by a football at under-8s level, playing for Colonel Gardens Primary School. Moved on to soccer and now loves his basketball. But recently he said, Dad, come out and let's have a kick. And of course, because he hasn't played any footy, I've had to sort of teach him a bit. And I've shown him on the TV, because he's a left footer, and I've said, you've got to run straight, target, blah, 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 blah. And I've shown him on the TV, you watch this guy kicking for goal, he's going to run out to the right and he's either going to miss it to the right, he's going to hook it left. And without fail, that's what happens. And it is an indictment on professional AFL football that these blokes under pressure from 40 metres out cannot run straight at a goal, point their toe at the bloke standing with the hat, with the flags in the middle of the goals, and just kick it straight. It's an indictment on skills development in this sport. It really is.
Absolutely.
Anyway, all right, no one's putting up their hand, Pete. I know you got to go. I got to go too. Mate. Look, it's fantastic. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining us. Don't forget, if you want to support us, go to patreon.com/AFL Crowcast. Myself, Macca, and Nikki will be back on Sunday night with the wrap show, wrapping up Friday night's game. Until then, everyone stay safe, be good, and we'll see you later on.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.